Demetrius Andrade retains his WBO World Middleweight title with a 12th round TKO of Artur Akavov. Now, most of you will remember Akavov from when he fought Billy Joe Saunders, and he gave Billy Joe Saunders a hell of a lot of trouble in that fight, particularly in the first half. In fact, there were quite a few neutral observers who felt that Akavov may have done enough to win in the Billy Joe fight. Oh, yes, there was, and that is not a ridiculous conclusion to come to, that Akavov won. Off the top of my head, I don't think I scored the fight. I can't remember now, but I do remember in the early part of that fight thinking that Billy Joe might find himself in trouble here because Akavov was putting it on him in them early rounds. So we have a comparison between Billy Joe and Andrade in terms of how they dealt with the same opponent. Andrade had no such problems. He controlled the fight from the opening bell, and on most people's scorecards, he never lost a round. Akavov was just there to survive. Against Billy Joe, Akavov was actually coming forward and landing shots. But I think early on against Demetrius Andrade, Akavov realized that it was too tall a task. And talking about height, I think that played a big factor into why Akavov wasn't able to fight the way he did against Billy Joe. Billy Joe, a much shorter man with shorter arms than Demetrius Andrade, was simply easier to get to. Andrade used his height and reach very well. I think he's probably got underrated punching power. I think, you know, Andrade is a stylist. He's slick. So he's not somebody that is going to force the pace a lot of the time. He's going to wait for you to come to him and react to what you're doing. And because of that, fighters like him don't always necessarily have the highest KO ratio, but they might hit harder than you expect. And I think that may be the case with Demetrius Andrade. So I think Akavov probably felt some shots from Andrade early on and thought to himself, you know what? I can't afford to take chances getting close to this guy because he might hit me with something that's going to seriously hurt me. So yeah, Andrade was in complete control from start to finish. And I'll talk about the quote unquote finish in a minute. But I did see some criticism online, including from the Sky team. The Sky team were very critical of Andrade for not closing the show. They had an opponent in front of him. You know, he had an opponent in front of him who, after a certain number of rounds, was simply in there to survive. He really wasn't trying to win the fight anymore. I mean, there was one or two spots late in the fight where he did throw a nice little flurry of shots and appeared to take heart from it. But for the most part, Akavov was in survival mode. And the Sky team criticized him for not closing the show. And I saw one or two people in my Facebook group criticizing him for not being able to cut the ring off effectively. But again, it's a stylistic thing. If you are a slick southpaw counterpuncher like Demetrius Andrade, who your entire amateur and professional career is, where your entire amateur and professional career is based upon slick counterpunching, making people miss and making them pay, moving around on the back foot. When you've been doing that your whole career, it's no surprise that when it comes to cutting the ring off, you're not going to be that good at it because that's not your style. Same with a pressure fighter. Take a Mike Tyson or a Joe Frazier. Do you expect either one of those guys to be able to counterpunch on the back foot particularly effectively? Not really. It's a style thing. So, Demetrius Andrade, never been a pressure fighter. He's the antithesis of that. He's a slick boxer. So you can't expect somebody like that to, know how to cut the ring off like a Golovkin will cut off the ring, for example, And you can't expect Golovkin to be able to box as slick and effectively on the back foot as an Andrade, same situation. But be that as it may, the Sky team also criticized him for, I guess, like I say, not stepping on the gas and not being highly entertaining. But I think they were being a bit harsh because you got two slick southpaws in there. I mean, when two slick southpaws fight each other, it's very rarely entertaining. In Andrade's previous fight against Captain Dokwa, he was in there against an orthodox fighter who wasn't slick. And there you saw Andrade drop the guy multiple times and just look a lot more exciting. So it depends what style Andrade's up against. If Andrade's fighting a Golovkin, a Canelo, I expect those fights to be a lot more entertaining than this Akavov fight was. A hell of a lot more competitive as well, obviously. But yeah, I thought that the performance was perfectly fine from Andrade. I didn't think there was any issues with it. You can't look exciting and entertaining against every opponent. You're going to come across some guys who, you know, cancel you out in terms of entertainment value. But when it came to the stoppage, that is where my big criticism lies. That was one of the worst stoppages I've ever seen. It was in the 12th round. Akavov didn't appear to be hurt or anything like that. The referee jumped in and stopped it with just seconds to go. A very, very curious decision. Well, it's actually at the 2-minute 36. So it was, you know, a couple minutes to go. 2-minute 36 of the 12th. Referee stepped in and stopped it. Very, very curious decision. And it does make you wonder whether there was something untoward going on there. Now, Akavov was never going to win the fight in a million years. He'd lost just about every round. He didn't have Andrade in any kind of trouble or anything like that. So what motivation would someone have for doing something untoward? Well, again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just theorizing here. I'm speculating. But let's say, theoretically, that somebody, a bigwig, somebody connected to the fight, had placed a large amount of money down on Andrade to win by knockout or to stop Akavov. Going into the 12th, would they be a bit anxious? You know, potentially. Again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I have no inside knowledge. I'm just speculating based upon the very, very strange nature of that stoppage. I cannot understand it. You let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about Demetrius Andrade's performance, Akavov's performance, how Andrade compares to Billy Joe Saunders. I personally feel as though Andrade would beat Billy Joe Saunders. I said this going into their proposed fight, which was obviously cancelled due to Billy Joe and the failed PED tests. I felt like it would be a very tough competitive fight, but I did favor Demetrius Andrade. He's the taller guy. I think he's just as slick as Saunders, but he's very big, isn't he, for a light middleweight? And I think that could be the difference, you know, just the size, the extra arm length, and they're both slick southpaws. Again, Andrade versus Billy Joe is not going to be the most competitive fight you've ever seen. I mean, sorry, excuse me. Not competitive. I mean, the most exciting fight you've ever seen. It's not going to be entertaining, is it? In all probability. Occasionally you get two slick southpaws fight each other and it turns out randomly to be a good fight, but generally they cancel each other out and it's a chess match for 12 rounds. Anyway, let me know how you feel about everything I've talked about in this video. It's happening, I'm out. And who would you like to see? In fact, before I go, who would you like to see Demetrius Andrade face? The winner of Canelo versus Jacobs or Golovkin? Or, you know, let me know who you, because the winner of Canelo versus Jacobs is going to have 3 belts. Back in the days, that would have been an undisputed fight because the WBO wasn't recognized for much of the 1990s into the early 2000s. So Demetrius Andrade back then would have just been a contender challenging for the undisputed, which would be the winner of Canelo Jacobs. But how do you think Andrade would do against either one of those guys? And how do you think he would do against Triple G? And he actually called Triple G out, which is interesting, isn't it? Because Triple G doesn't have any belts at this point, but Andrade still wants to fight him. That's a statement of intent. He also called out, I don't know whether he called him out after this fight, but he's been calling him out over the past month or so in interviews, who he refers to as the sisters, which are basically the Charlo brothers, but he calls them the sisters. He called them out too. So let's see what happens. Let me know who you'd like to see. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up There's no contract and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.